Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today, we have Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you this morning.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. How are you this morning?
Good. You made it in through the rain.
Through the rain, it was pretty bad.
Many hurricanes.
No,
we're doing well, and we're ready to go. And
after a weird weekend.
A weird weekend. We had a weird last week personally with all our weather, but politically speaking, it was a weird weekend.
No kidding.
You know, when I had the TV on, but my wife was watching it, and she was doing something much more important than watching this news. she was creating a quilt.
That's way more
And I said, well, at least you're productive. But it was on the TV. It was announced. I said, holy man, you know, this is big news. I don't think this happens very often, and maybe never before and never again. But what a mess. But, you know, the first thoughts that came to my mind was, you know, this whole concept and the incessant chanting about democracy.
Yeah.
Is Trump going to destroy democracy? Heck, libertarians in the Constitution, they don't even want democracy.
That's right, yeah.
in its pure sense. But anyway, I often think about Hayek's statement, his article on why the worst rise to the top. and when you think about that, you know, how pure democracy does it. But then when democracy doesn't go well, lately it hasn't gone well for the Democrats, they skirt around it. It's all just talk. It's all trying. It's part of the lying and the deceit and the nihilism exists. You don't tell the truth. That confuses people. So they make up whatever they want. But it is something yet to work its way out. But we found a bit fascinating Jonathan Turley's article, approaching it in a more sober manner, because, you know, the 25th Amendment, that issue comes up. What about the election? Was that a democratic election? And it goes on. I imagine there's a few more questions. But when I look at this whole thing, Daniel, I think, what an irony, you know, for at least from 2015 going into the 16 thing, and Russiagate and all these things, and all this effort to put Trump in prison. And not only that was totally unsuccessful. Maybe it was them that had something to do, at least their heart was with them. Why don't we just shoot the guy? What a darn mess this is. And you know, the other thought I had was, what would it be like? This is my daydreaming. What would it be like if we just didn't have a president? That's why I think about the Swiss. They have a very weak president. So, but we have weak presidents, and we have weak Congresses, and we have everybody's thinking about their own political careers and their money and the power. But it's mainly the power that they're looking for. When I think about the real the individual that was most involved, and I may well be wrong on this, but I think this is a Pelosi deal.
It could be,
And the irony is, she's trying to work this out and save this guy that's 81-year-old, or get rid of one of the guys. And she was the oldest of the group. She's 84. So the whole thing about the age, I've never enjoyed using that as the big issue, but it is a big issue. You know, it's just because I see it more as an illness with evil, you know, on what goes on. So anyway, there'll be a lot of talk about this and a lot of ramifications. And if you do this, what else is going to happen? But the irony of is that how this got flipped around to the point where the Democrats, you know, a month or so ago, they were ecstatic. They thought for sure he would be put in jail, and that must have blown their cover when they couldn't get him. And that's when they became much more sympathetic. And although we don't know who did the planning, at least there were statements by many notable people saying things much more cross, much more violent oriented than anything Trump ever said.
Yeah.
So anyway, the noise is out there, the mess is there, and as far as I'm concerned, it's all a result of the bankruptcy, the moral bankruptcy of this country, as well as the financial bankruptcy, and they're fighting over power, and they're running out of steam.
Yeah.
And I think this is what this should be anticipated, and the crisis, I anticipate it'll get much worse, but I'm also very hopeful that the seeds that we have planted over the years, and the talk about non-intervention and libertarianism and freedom, is growing, and just as events switched in a minute here this last week, to the point where the Democrats went from the top of the heap to the bottom of the heap. I think that if we can generate enough interest in people who just leave me alone, let us take care of our problems, we'd all be better off.
Well, in March of 1968, LBJ sat, I think, in the Oval Office, if I'm not mistaken. Television cameras were rolling, and he explained why that late in the game he was not going to run for re-election. The writing was on the wall. There had not been a single primary vote cast. It was before any voting had been done, and he stepped down, and it shocked the nation. Well, here you have how many, 50-some years later, and this is what President Biden did. Put up that first clip. Contrast. LBJ sitting before the nation explaining it. President Biden, supposedly, a tweet without any explanation on Joseph R. Biden Jr. letterhead, not White House letterhead, not Office of the Presidential Seal letterhead. No, Joseph R. Biden Jr. letterhead, no explanation. If we can go back to that. And I'll paraphrase it. Got a great country. I did a great job. Everything is fantastic, except it's been one of the greatest honors of my life. And while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it's in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president. He did not follow this up with a video. He did not follow it up, even with a photo op. People are asking, is he even alive? Like, literally, is he even alive? Where is he? What is his state of mind? What happened? It's one of the most bizarre things, and I think that's why we picked as the subject, as the title here, the coup, because it almost looks like a coup. It reminds you of in the old days in the third world, when something would go up on the TV screen, folk dancing or something, because in reality, a coup had taken place. Now I have a couple more tweets I wanted to show you that capture the idea and the shock and surprise. Go to this next one. This is End Wokeness. It's a right-wing Twitter X. Biden dropped out over 4 hours ago. Now, this was on the 21st. Biden dropped out over 4 hours ago, yet we literally have zero evidence that he knows about it. Not even a photo. The paperwork has already been filed. The campaign cash is being transferred. Endorsements for Kamala are pouring in, yet we have no clue who sent that post, i.e. the one that I just showed. And one last one, Dr. Paul, about the shockingness of this is political tweeting. Biden's announcement stunned White House and campaign aides, who up until this afternoon, i.e. yesterday afternoon, were insisting that he would stay in the race. Quote, "We are all finding out by tweet," said one Dem. "None of us understand what's happening." I've never seen anything this bizarre in my life.
I was wondering, they took care of the power
Yeah.
the best they could on this little coup that happened, and they transferred the money. That was important. But then again, there are certain things that nobody ever knows who has the final control, and that is the deep state, because behind the scenes they run things. Some of them are not even known. Other times we know some people. But what about I think they call it the red phone, the nuclear phone, and only the president can make the declaration that can be used. Weapons like that can be used, but they didn't mention that. But it's still the military. It seems like nobody's worried about the danger of expansion of what's happening in the Middle East. Africa and all around the world, Taiwan, it's all expanding. And so I've always been very interested in looking distractions. Why are big things going on? And this is a big thing going on. But could this be some type of distraction? Of course, you imply maybe there's a coup going on, much bigger and different, going on at the same time. They get everybody concentrating on Trump's way he walks upstairs and things. They've been doing that for years now. So it to me is a mess, but it should not surprise anybody. In total bankruptcy, things deteriorate. What they don't understand is there's always a payback. If an individual goes bankrupt morally or financially, if they want to get back to a normal life, they have to pay back. They have to work, and they have to regain confidence. And that is what's not being done, but it's being recognized that this country is in bad shape. And fortunately, we go to people like Jonathan Turley and many others that still keep us above water and trying to understand these things. And I think that number is growing. And we mentioned so many of the organizations that we've worked with. So and the one thing is we don't know exactly the numbers of people who are with us. But I'll tell you what, I think it's a lot bigger than anybody dreams. And there's a lot less people who gets excited. They weren't even excited when they picked Kamala. She was about the, low on the totem pole, becomes next to president. Now they're claiming, unless they got their wires crossed up and the emails mixed up, they're claiming that she's it. She's in charge, which is a long shot as far as I'm concerned. Something will happen.
Well, you make a very good point about foreign policy. I mean, literally, Benjamin Netanyahu is in the air coming to D.C. He was supposed to meet with Biden. Maybe he still will. But people wonder, is Biden still the president? So you have that. You had a new war start over the weekend. Israel, with U.S. participation, attacked and bombed the port of Hodeidah in Yemen. Another major war started. You have things heating up in Ukraine-Russia war with the possibility of Ukraine using longer range U.S. missiles into Russia. So you have crises like we have not seen in decades happening all at once. And then you look around and you say, well, who's running things? I mean, we should feel, I think, pretty nervous about the fact that no one seems to be in charge of the administration. We don't seem to have a commander-in-chief at a time when we are starting new wars every day.
Because a lot of that is very secret. The secret government that I've talked about that was really became noticeable to me was in 1963 with the government committing the assassinations. And but the foreign policy marches on. It doesn't seem to slow up one bit, and yet we still are concentrating on where's the president? What's he doing? But I think that it's almost like it's on autopilot. And it's not just, I get a little annoyed because he deserves so much criticism, but that you take the Biden thing and say he's responsible for all the inflation, which is nonsense. There's a lot of people responsible for that. And I think that people right now have no idea what's going on. But the people who pull the strings, it seems like the control of where our troops are going and what they're doing is absolutely still in the hands of people who were, overcoming any decent resistance. And we do have that in spite of my sharp concern and criticism of the government per se. There's a lot of good people there, but they're outnumbered and are not controlled, and they don't have the authority. The people who have the power take the authority.
Yeah, that's true. Well, the Democratic slogan for 2024, if you remember, Dr. Paul, and I know you do, democracy is on the ballot in 2024. And that's what makes the whole thing so bizarre. Now, you mentioned our friend Jonathan Turley earlier. He has a piece that just came out, if you can put that next clip up, where he discusses this issue. And the piece is called Succession by Defenestration, How Biden's Withdrawal May Trigger a 25th Amendment Fight. It's a fascinating article. It's in the Hill. In his introduction, he says, after weeks of Democrats and the media raising the alarm of his mental capacity, Biden finally gave up his public refusal to step aside. Harris will now be the nominee through succession by defenestration or being tossed from a window. Yet there remains a lingering question of Biden's capacity to serve for another 6 months. Now, here are a couple of more clips from that article, Dr. Paul, and I've highlighted part of it if you can put the next one up. So Turley says, the Democratic Party essentially created its own political version of the 25th Amendment in forcing Biden off the ticket. I underline this part. This decision was about as voluntary as leaving a building by way of a window on the 46th floor. It's particularly the case when you're thrown out of the window by your closest friends. The unseemly image of succession by defenestration will soon be whitewashed by a media that will praise Biden after weeks of declaring him incompetent and enfeebled. That, however, leaves a lingering question after the fall. How can Biden remain in office when he is incapable of running for the office, the very office that he's in? And now one last one, Dr. Paul, because I think is where Jonathan hits the key point here. If you go to the next clip. First, it could argue that Biden was withdrawing out of recognition that he is no longer politically viable. And this is the part about democracy on the ballot, Dr. Paul. That makes a mockery of the democratic process. And I underline this part. Millions of people went through the primary elections to select him as their nominee. Now, he would be set aside and replaced by a vote of the party establishment, like a shift in the Russian Politburo. I would correct that and say Soviet Politburo, but nevertheless, that's essentially what happened.
I think that's a great point. And he also reminds us about the 25th Amendment. He says the 25th Amendment was written with largely physical disabilities in mind. If a president is comatose and incapacitated, but not this this power struggle and ineptness, but it doesn't look like. I've never thought the 25th Amendment made a whole lot of sense, and they've argued over it since. It's hard to know exactly when to, because the vice president and the cabinet that he appoints, they're the ones that have to turn on him. They're probably the last people who turn on him. And what if you have at stake like Kamala? She says, I mean, she has accomplished a whole lot with her qualifications. Don't you think she's gone up the ladder? And we won't mention where her first step in that ladder was.
Yeah, exactly.
In San Francisco.
Yeah, I know. It's incredible now. And the question is, and as far as I know, Obama has not endorsed Kamala, so there could be a power struggle behind the scene. How are they going to select who will be the replacement for Biden? Is it a shoo-in? What's the process look like? Nobody knows. We know the money went, and we know that the money dried up just before Biden was kicked out or whatever happened. But there's an interesting article. I'm not going to go into it, Dr. Paul, but I just wanted to put it up because basically based on what you just said, now this is in Compact Magazine, which can be a very thoughtful magazine, but this is Ziad Jalani wrote an article called A Candidate Without Convictions, if you can put that next one up. That is essentially the case of Kamala. We remember what it was like when she ran for president last time. She was eviscerated by Tulsi Gabbard in the debates. Now here's a clip that Ziad put in his article, and I just want to read it really quickly because this is who they're expecting people to get excited about. I'll go to the next one. At one point in Harris's campaign was throwing out such forgettable policy proposals that someone created a Harris policy generator to make fun of them. Whatever else you can say about them, neither Sanders nor Biden, the two candidates who made it through to the end of the 2020 primary, could be accused of similar prevarications. She was on all sides of every issue. She has not distinguished herself as vice president for anything beyond her cackle and really, really weird statements about the past unfiltered through the present and in the future, all kinds of stuff that makes me wonder about what she's been smoking over there. But it's a bizarre situation.
Well, you know what? If we don't have a president, we don't know where he is, and all of a sudden now our House Speaker Johnson, he thinks he should resign and leave. Well, then if Kamala, if something happens to her, guess who's president?
Be him. Well, that's true.
they're all thinking I'm lining him up. That's why
I hadn't thought of that.
I like less government, as you know. All this stuff going on, but also, you know, Johnson is the first one to say he ought to resign.
Yeah.
You know, from. But when you think of her history, I mean, she was really influential, and she was all over the place politically speaking.
Yeah.
I mean, she came out. I bet she satisfied some of the people that want to be tough on crime, you know, at one time. But she's tough on the country. She's tough on liberty.
Yeah.
The whole works.
And the Tulsi thing, you know, where she said, you know, you pride yourself on sending so many black men to jail for smoking marijuana, but when they asked you if you smoked, you kind of laughed and giggled about it, you know. So it's a hypocrisy that people are disgusted by.
If this country can accept the maneuvering either through democracy or manipulation of democracy and put somebody in the presidency like that. But you know, some of the polling, I think, up until last week showed that she was less popular than the president. But you know, this last couple of days, since she was grabbing hold of the power, all of a sudden her numbers go up.
Yeah.
So it's a mess.
Well, I had a couple more quick clips just to show. Now the next one. Now Vance, J.D. Vance, the former President Trump's running mate. Now he came out and said, if you put that next one up, Biden should resign the presidency now. So he joins the Speaker of the House saying he's got to resign. And Trump had an interesting point, if you go to the next one. These are both from Modernity magazine. Trump calls for an investigation into Joe Biden's doctors. They lied to the American public. Now that's a whole other angle that we didn't even talk about. That had they been lying this whole time, had they had a diagnosis that he had some mental incapacitation and they were lying about it, that raises some interesting questions as well.
Boy, that's for sure. And that again touches on this health matter. It could be tricky because you sort of, in that position, it's pretty hard to say, well, that's a private matter. You know?
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, you know, and there could be some privacy that ought to be recognized, but with the power they have, the disease is this demand and effort and the lying and the cheating to get power. Power is it, and that is what they struggle for because even Biden. Early on, he had different opinions on, you know, his political position, and that's not unusual. I mean, I was sort of fascinated when the Cold War, when World War II ended, how, you know, if you were in the right place at the right time and had the right friends, you could have been a dedicated Nazi doing a lot of good research and all. Immediately get an easy door out of there, you know. So they had no trouble, you know, switching, you know, the loyalties. But they're loyal. Many people are loyal to money and not to the loyalty to the principles of liberty, and let everybody else fend for themselves.
Well, the first news out of this, the first polling out of this, amazing, and I still think it's a coup against Biden. And you said earlier, and I think it's important to bring it up in the show, before the show, you said you kind of feel sorry for him because when they thought he was going to keep them in power, which is what they love, they were propping him up, shooting him up full of stuff, and as soon as it looks like he's not going to be able to, they put their boot in his face and kick him down. So, but the first poll that come out, this is, I think just come out this morning, interactive poll, for what it's worth, on Twitter X, does not look good over the whole race. It's 64 for Trump and 29 for Kamala Harris. But if you look at the spread in some of these key swing states, it looks bad. North Carolina, Trump with 71-29 over Kamala Harris. Georgia, Trump 70-30. Nevada, Trump 65-35. Arizona, Trump 65-35. Michigan closer, 53-47. Wisconsin 55-45, and Pennsylvania, a key state, 55-45. So at this point, for what it's worth, the polling is not that exciting about Kamala Harris. Yeah.
How is she going to handle the money? You know, that's a lot of money.
A lot of money.
You know, to deal with. How are we going to transfer these funds that I'm in charge of?
Yeah.
So,
well, we'll keep an eye on it. It's fascinating. It's a really. This is an historic time, I think, in my opinion. But so So I'm just going to close out by thanking everyone for joining us. We're kind of back to normal here, which feels good. But I do want to remind you that we are just a little over 5 weeks out from the 2024 Ron Paul Conference in Washington, D.C., closer to the Dulles Airport than the dark town of D.C., but nevertheless, Mordor, I should say. But nevertheless, I will put a link in. I forgot to do it before the show. I'll put a link in the description to get those tickets. And listen, we are running out of time. Ron Paul Scholar Seminar, Upper Division undergrad, grad student, scholarship available, a one-day event that is going to be memorable for you, not only because of what you learn, but because of who you meet, people that are going to be your friends and maybe even business partners, but excellent young people. There is a link that I will put in here. If you forget to look in the description, go to ronpaulinstitute.org and you'll see it on the upper right column. Apply now. There's only a week left to apply for this.
Very good.
Dr. Paul.
You know, and once again, I want to talk about it, the big picture, because I do believe that if we know and understand and see the consequence of a nation going far beyond any intent in providing liberty for the people, that when it goes bankrupt, which they eventually always do all the way back to the Roman Empire, because its power becomes the most important thing they do. They overextend themselves with the welfare at home as well as the warfare overseas and expanding the empire. And then this is what has happened to it. But it runs out of steam. It runs out of moral support, and people do get aggravated. They get aggravated early on and quietly. And I like to think about what happened during COVID, so-called epidemic, how that was, started smoldering, and when people would become suspicious of the outrageous things going on. But eventually, people woke up, and now we're actually, not completely able to talk about it and say, that was all fake. It's going on. But the big thing is when this happens, they depend on lying. Lying is the way they keep the empire going. And if you put telling the truth, that becomes treasonous. And just think of how many people get put in jail or lose their life or be put in prison. Boy, I'll tell you, because they want to tell the truth. That's alive and well. That contest has been going on for thousands of years, and it's before us right now. It's been precipitated by a calamity in this country, and the challenge is, how much of the republic will remain? And I don't think anybody knows that. I'm an optimist, but I don't know what's going to happen next year, and we may have to go through a lot more pain, because in a way, what has to be done is you have to pay the bills. You can't get anything for free. You can't have total prosperity and total liberty without an investment. And that's what is being decided. Will we as a people invest in the cause of liberty? And I am going to continue my efforts the best I can to bring that about. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.